Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we could please have everyone find their seats, we'll go ahead and begin this wonderful ceremony. Well, good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to welcome you this morning to the Space and Missile Systems Center Command Realignment Ceremony, as the center is reassigned from Air Force Materiel Command to Air Force Space Command. I am your narrator, Senior Master Sergeant Brent Carter. Presiding over today's ceremony are General Lester L. Lyles, Commander, Air Force Materiel Command, and Lieutenant General Roger G. DeCook, Vice Commander, Air Force Space Command. Providing music today is the United States Air Force Band of the Golden West, led this morning by Captain Douglas C. Monroe. There are some very special guests attending today's ceremony that I would like to introduce. The Honorable Jane Harmon, United States Representative for the 36th Congressional District, State of California. Representing California Governor Gray Davis is Major General William Jeffords, United States Army retired, Senior Military Advisor and Director of the Office of Military Base Retention and Reuse. Representing the Air Force Chief of Staff is Lieutenant General Robert H. Fogelsong, Deputy Chief of Staff for Air and Space Operations, and confirmed to be the next Air Force Vice Chief of Staff. We are pleased also to have Mrs. Tina Arnold, wife of Lieutenant General Brian Arnold, Commander of the Space and Missile Systems Center, and the SMC senior leadership here today. We are also honored to have with us various civic leaders, aerospace industry partners, retired general officers, and all the men and women of the Air Force Materiel Command and Air Force Space Command attending today. Thank you. And now I'd like to take a moment to explain the sequence of events for today's ceremony. We will begin with honors for the officiating officers, followed by our national anthem. After the invocation and formal recognition of the Space and Missile Systems Center, we will hear comments from both General Lyles and General DeCook. We will then commence with the publishing of the reassignment order and the symbolic exchange of the SMC colors from Air Force Materiel Command to Air Force Space Command. We will follow that with comments from Congresswoman Harmon, and the ceremony will conclude with comments by Lieutenant General Arnold, our commander. History reveals that as far back as Roman times, standards representing their national or clan origins were frequently carried in front of advancing armies. Even with the advent of modern warfare, the passing of the colors and the honor to carry those colors is just as competitive. In similar fashion to a change of command, today's command realignment ceremony offers a public forum through which to witness the orderly manner in which authority is passed from the current command to the gaining command. It also reflects the public acceptance of the responsibilities which are being passed to the new command. As you will see, this ceremony, just as it has for centuries, adds special color and pageantry to military life while preserving tradition and stimulating esprit de corps. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of our official party. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors and the singing of our national anthem by Lieutenant Colonel John Cherry.
Forward, hoot!
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Port, home. Good. Up there. Port.
Thank you, Colonel Cherry. Chaplain Rosman, will you please come forward to give the invocation?
Please join with me as we address the Commander-in-Chief of the universe. Father God, creator of our universe, you have set the stars in place, counted them, and you've named them all. Today, Los Angeles Air Force Base becomes a part of the Air Force Space Command team. Thank you for the opportunity of being a part of Air Force Material Command for so many years. Changes are always happening in our Air Force, and this new chapter brings a change in how we see the future. This chapter brings together all the elements of space under one umbrella in our universe. You have granted wisdom and patience during our transition. Now we ask you to grant us joy in our new relationship with Air Force Space Command. We pray for our nation, our Commander-in-Chief, his cabinet, Congress, and those who have laid down their lives in the past month. May freedom's light grow brighter, and may you continue to bless America, O God, for it is in you we trust. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Rosman. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The Space and Missile Systems Center has been and will continue to be a centerpiece for ensuring national security for the United States. The heritage of SMC is rich and proud, and the men and women of the center have led the United States to victory in every modern-day conflict. The Cold War, the Gulf War, the air war over Serbia, and the Kosovo conflict are but a few of the many examples of SMC contributing to the national security objectives of America. And now SMC will be called upon to help defeat the faceless enemy of terrorism. SMC was founded in July of 1954 and was originally known as the Western Development Division. General Bernard A. Schriever was the first commander of what is now SMC and led the development and fielding of the intercontinental ballistic missile. The efforts of General Schriever were instrumental in combating Soviet aggression during the Cold War and ultimately led to the fall of the Soviet Union and communism in Eastern Europe. The ICBM work conducted at SMC provided the basis for the entire U.S. space program as we know it today. Space launch vehicles, weather, communications, navigation, and early warning satellites were born out of the efforts of the men and women of SMC. These space capabilities have been realized not only by the joint warfighter, but also by the commercial space industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry in America. SMC has also given birth to several other organizations. In 1961, parts of SMC formed what we know today as the National Reconnaissance Office, which provides world-class information to our national decision makers. Portions of SMC also became part of Air Force Space Command in 1982. Until then, development, procurement, operations, and sustainment resided in SMC for more than 28 years. Today we mark a crossroads where development, procurement, operations, and sustainment are once again in one organization. The best of both worlds are being brought together. the discipline of operations, and the innovation of development will result in one of the strongest major commands in the military. The future holds great promise for this organization as it evolves to its full potential. SMC is the center of excellence for space and missile systems, and the role of SMC will be enhanced as a result of the realignment to Air Force Space Command. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce General Lyles.
Thank you, Brent, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Congresswoman Harmon, General Fogelsong, General DeCook, General and Mrs. Arnold, and Mrs. Arnold, Brian's mother, former commanders, distinguished guests all, and I see a lot of them out there in the audience, a lot of familiar faces, friends, co-workers, conspirators, former bosses, a little bit of everybody. This is really a wonderful, wonderful day. It's an honor for me to be here to participate in this very important and very symbolic transfer ceremony. And I use the term transfer. It may not be the official term, but that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to transfer this great organization from one great command to another great, great command. I'm also honored to be here today with some very, very good friends. First, the Honorable Jane Harmon, the 36th District, who amongst all the many other things he does in Congress and does for this great community, she's now the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Subcommittee for Counterterrorism and Homeland Defense, and I can tell you, and you probably all can imagine what that really entails and how important that function is in today's environment. And now Lieutenant General Doc Fogelsong, soon to be General Doc Fogelsong. Doc, it's great to have you here representing the Chief, and as you just heard earlier, just last week the Senate confirmed Doc to get his 4th star as our next Vice Chief of Staff, sometime hopefully in the next few weeks or so. So very, very honored to be amongst all the Doc. Congratulations to you. Doc, when I was a Vice Chief, I think I left 3 envelopes in the desk there, and I noticed last time I visited, they're still there, so you might want to take a look at them. See what the job really entails. Someone recently asked me about this ceremony, and they asked me essentially, how do I feel about it? And they did it in the context of a couple of different things. One, as an engineer, they asked me what I thought about having a very technical, engineering-oriented organization, SMC, transferred to what we've always thought of as an operational command, but really I think that's a misnomer. They also asked me in the perspective of having served here 3 assignments, as a young lieutenant, as a colonel, and then as one of the former commanders as a 3-star, what I thought about losing this organization. They also asked me in terms of the facilities, and particularly this facility here, Fort MacArthur. Some of you don't know, I don't know if Bob Crumpy's in the audience anywhere, perhaps he's not. I was a witness, along with Bob Crumpy, Lieutenant General Dick Henry, one of the former commanders here, and then my boss at the time, because I was an aide-de-camp as a young captain, General Al Slay. We were the 4 who drove in the gate here of the then closing Fort MacArthur and looked at this place and said, this is the right place for the men and women of the Air Force space community and Space and Missile Systems Organization specifically. And we said, this is it. And from there, you see what we've created, and this is a fantastic, fantastic activity and organization and location. And I was also asked in the context of losing part of Air Force Materiel Command. Again, the question was, what do I really feel about this? And in all honesty, and very, very deep in my heart, my feelings are very, very great. I am excited about the possibilities, excited about what I know is going to be the future, and excited about the rationale for making this move. You know, as I reflected on my introduction to the space community back as a 2nd lieutenant 32 years ago, seems just like yesterday, by the way, 32. Some of the young lieutenants out here probably weren't even born then, but a 2nd lieutenant, an engineer, right out of graduate school, coming out here. The name of the organization at that time was SAMCO, Space and Missile Systems Organization. And there were many young engineers like myself who came here as their first assignment, first real assignment. My first assignment was grad school, but first real assignment. And it's not unlike today. It has not really changed in that context. There are lots of names, some of whom are still around, and some who have long left the Air Force, gone to industry, or done other things, and worked for bosses that had some familiar names to some of you. I won't mention them all, but the commander at the time when I came here was General O'Neill. and then subsequently General Sam Phillips. And for all of us, as I think back, for all of us, whether it's the commanders or the young engineers, the name of this organization and even the name of the parent command did not really make a difference. What was really significant to us was one thing. The number one thing was the mission, the space mission. It was exciting, it was cutting edge, it was futuristic, and to some extent it was even mysterious. And for all of us, it was a mission that really counted. We could care less what the symbols were in terms of the letters we put in front of the organization. It was a mission that was very, very important. And today, as we transfer the Space and Missile Systems Center to Air Force Space Command, I'm mindful of the fact that it was that mission, it is that mission, that compelled the Congressional Space Commission to make sweeping recommendations to make sure that mission was not lacking, and that mission would endure and would have a very, very strong future. Now, all of us who have been associated with any part of the space mission or any part of this organization can fully understand that. And if you could forgive me from literary license, I'd like to paraphrase Leonardo da Vinci, who once said, I quote, "When once you've tasted space, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned to the heavens, for there you have been, and there you will always long to return." Now, he was talking about flying or gliding at the time, but I think the literary paraphrase is still very, very appropriate. And it's a return to a renewed emphasis on space that we're marking today. And it couldn't be more important than in today's environment. You know, 21 months ago, I think we all know, obviously we entered the 21st century. But I don't think any of us really accepted the fact that we would be facing a 21st century threat and preparing today for 21st century warfare until that tragic day 3 weeks ago tomorrow. I'm mindful of the statement made early this year by General Ed Eberhart, the current Air Force Space Command commander, the SYNC for United States Space Command, and obviously the SYNC for NORAD. And as all of you know, Ed wanted to be here today. He really wanted to be here today. He called me last Thursday when it became very obvious that his SYNC functions, particularly the NORAD functions, you could imagine, were driving him to a point where he had to be in Washington today and he could not be here. He wanted to express his great support for the organization and his tremendous support and admiration for the men and women of SMC, and how much he is going to pledge to take care of them. You'll probably hear some words similar to that from Roger DeCook. Well, Ed couldn't attend, obviously, but I'm mindful of a congressional testimony that he gave earlier this year when he talked about the rationale for the Space Commission and the Space Commission's recommendation. And this realignment specifically was done to ensure a greater emphasis on space to preclude a future space Pearl Harbor, a sneak attack on our space assets. Well, we all know we just experienced a Pearl Harbor, a sneak attack on our nation's heart and soul. It was a sneak attack by an asymmetric threat, one that we hadn't really perhaps thought seriously of to some extent. And as I think about how we counter that threat in today's environment, I'm mindful of one thing. One key way to counter an asymmetric threat is with asymmetric capabilities. And in the United States Air Force, and certainly in the United States military, there is no greater asymmetric capability than the capabilities provided by our space systems. And in my opinion, there's no greater talent than the dedicated men and women who conceive, develop, acquire, and operate those space systems. So whether it's soon to be an expansion and growth in the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, or communications missions that we do from our space platforms, or new missions in the future of space control and even potentially space warfare, the medium of space will play the most critical role for our national security in the 21st century. And as we take on this war on terrorism, to me, the medium of space is going to be the key for our success that we know will definitely come. So this organization, in all of its incarnations, whether you talk about the Western Development Division created by General Schriever, SMC, Space Systems Division, Space Division, SAMSO, Ballistic Missile Division, Ballistic Missile Office, all of the incarnations of this organization. And whether you talk about its past association with Air Force Systems Command or Air Force Materiel Command, it has had a very, very proud history. And now, in its new association as part of Air Force Space Command, it will have an even more important and more proud and more glorious future. To the former commanders here today, and there are several of them here, Now, I want to thank all of you and those who work for you for your vision, your leadership, and your dedication that have made this organization what it is today and have made it so terrific and so great. And now, to the men and women of Space Command's newest organization, let me just say congratulations to you, and we need you now more than ever. God bless you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm very, very honored to be here today.
Thank you, General Lyles. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd now like to introduce Lieutenant General Roger DeCoe.
Well, thank you, Sergeant Carter, for that nice introduction. It's always good to be back here at SMC. I left this organization, I guess, about 38 months ago, and I have to tell you at the time, I never envisioned that I would be back here participating in a ceremony like we're going to have today. Congressman Harmon, we're delighted to have you here. General Jeffords, representing the Governor's Office, General Fogasong, representing the Chief, all the former commanders of SMC who are gathered here today, all the aerospace professionals in the Southern California area who've honored us with your presence today, and then also, and not least of all, of course, to the men and women of the Space and Missile Systems Center, for which today is really a milestone. As General Lyles said, General Eberhart regrets greatly that he wasn't able to be here today. He was planning on doing this all the way up through the middle of last week when it became apparent that his other duties as Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Space Command and the North American Aerospace Defense Command were going to demand him being in Washington today. He's so looked forward to this because he would have liked to have said this himself, but hopefully in some small measure I can substitute for what he would have said had he been here today. It's always great to be back in Southern California. In 1963, author Neil Morgan said, "One of the most alluring things about Southern California is the image in the minds of its people of what this land can be." And I think that in the time that we're in today, nothing could be more true. This is a country of big dreams. This is a state of big dreams. The nation looks to you for the fulfillment of that dream. And of course, the Space and Missile Systems Center, for as long as its history and as many names as it's had, has been the organization that has made big dreams come true. It's a frantic and a changing world. I think we all know that. A former chief of the Army said, "Change typifies the modern world. You can either deal with it or it will deal with you." And throughout our Air Force history, people and organizations have always been our strength. We have grown and we have adapted just as we are doing here today. And in those winds of change, this organization has been born out of change itself. It was born in the aftermath of World War II, when atomic weapons and long-range rocketry and a new adversary came on the scene. It was a very real threat then, and right at our very doorstep. And the planning began with the antecedents of this organization for the exploitation of space. Organizationally, the Air Force adapted to those changes. And as the narrator said, in 1954, we stood up the Western Development Division, not far from this location, to deal with those kinds of changes. It quickly gained recognition as the center of the nation's technical excellence. The people of the Western Development Division rose to the occasion, and your predecessors here created the world's preeminent nuclear deterrent force and all of our pioneering space programs, which have become, as we all know, the bedrock of our national security. Indeed, you have a rich heritage here. Now, almost 50 years later, and 4 name changes, you are still the world's leader in space development. But once again, we find ourselves caught up in the winds of change. In 1921, an early air power theorist Julio Duhay, said, "Victory smiles on those who anticipate the changes in the character of war, not upon those who wait to adapt after the changes occur." The face of modern warfare is changing before our very eyes. We've moved from a battlefield to a battle space, from 3 dimensions to multidimensional conflict, air, sea, land, space, and yes, even cyberspace. The spectrum of conflict is broader than ever, and a new threat is again at our doorstep. Like other threats too, this will soon be removed as an obstacle to the cherished freedoms that this nation was founded on. Space systems, as General Lyles has said, are a bigger part of everything that we do. As a result, we've seen the need to adapt to a new organization, not just because the Space Commissioners told us to do so, but because it's the right thing to do. We in Air Force Space Command have worked shoulder to shoulder with Air Force Materiel Command and the Space and Missile Systems Center since Air Force Space Command was created in 1982. As a former commander, I know firsthand the dedication and the professionalism of the people here at the Space and Missile Systems Center. I also know of the support that the South Bay community provides to this organization. We also recognize that organizational change, no matter how small, is never easy. And as you all realize, this is not a small change, and big changes always create anxiety. People worry about whether they'll be appreciated in this new organization. Are their jobs secure? Will career progression suffer? I assure you that we in Air Force Space Command understand these concerns and will move out to address them, not just with words, but with action. I see exciting new opportunities on the horizon to strengthen our national security space activities as a result of this realignment. From space acquisition to space operations officers, we'll have a wide range of new space professionals. One last thing now, I'd like to pass out a few thank yous. To Headquarters Air Force Materiel Command, General Lyles. I've been through a number of realignments and reorganizations in my 33-year career. I don't think the word easy has ever been applied to a reorganization before, and so this might be a first. The leadership climate that you and General Eberhard have established from the start has made rather complex realignment work better here than in any other reorganization that I've ever been privileged to be associated with. We fully recognize that today we're creating an organization that has no counterpart anywhere. A cradle-to-grave powerhouse that's exactly the right organization for the 21st century. General Lyles, again, thank you to you, all of your headquarters staff, all of the people in Air Force Materiel Command who made this day possible. To General Fogelsong, today's ceremony is only a small piece of the major realignment that the Space Commission recommended. It has many pieces that go well beyond the ceremony that we're conducting here today. The Air Force is becoming the executive agent within the Department of Defense for all of our national security space activities. It has many other pieces to it, some of which are still unfinished, but in work, and thanks to the team that you were able to put together in the Air Staff to pull all those pieces together. Finally, to the men and women of the Space and Missile Systems Center, thank you for the terrific cooperation that we've received. Hardly a day has passed in the last 9 months that I haven't been on the phone, on a video teleconference, or been in direct contact here with General Arnold and the leadership team here at the Space and Missile Systems Center. You've got a great leadership team in place out here, one that is dedicated to making this realignment successful. And General Arnold, I'd like to thank you and your people as well. Our staffs have hammered out a myriad of details necessary to accomplish this merger, and they've done that without the rancor that sometimes accompanies organizational realignment. While much work remains to be done, we believe we're off to a terrific start. That great inventor and pioneer Henry Ford once said, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success." We're confident that this new team will succeed, and we're honored and excited to congratulate you all to becoming members of Air Force Space Command. Mission first, people always, one team. We're all guardians of the high frontier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerald Cook. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the Space and Missile Systems Center Command Realignment Ceremony. Attention to orders. Special Order GD-019, dated 22 August 2001, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Headquarters Space and Missile Systems Center, is relieved from assignment to Air Force Materiel Command and assigned to Air Force Space Command, effective 1 October 2001. With a symbolic exchange of the flag, responsibility for Space and Missile Systems Center, Los Angeles Air Force Base, passes from Air Force Materiel Command to Air Force Space Command.
I accept command.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, we'd like to ask Congresswoman Jane Harman to step forward for a few comments.
Good morning, everyone, and congratulations. It is an enormous pleasure for me to be here with my favorite generals at my favorite Air Force base with many dear friends. Les, you used the word conspiracy. I think that's a dangerous word these days, but I do recall fondly our conspiracies and Roger's and my conspiracies over the years, and I miss them. I hope you come home soon. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence here in the front row of my predecessor, Steve Kuykendall, and to thank you, Steve, for your service to our country, and to hope that our Pentagon and those in the Bush administration are smart enough to know that they need your talents again. Let me also thank, as everyone has, the uniformed and civilian personnel present today who work here in this fabulous Air Force Base system, and to say to you that we entrust you with our nation's security at the most difficult time, not just in my lifetime, but the most difficult time in our 200-plus year history. We also recognize the sacrifice that you are called to make, sometimes the ultimate sacrifice. And our prayers are with those, obviously as yours are, those heroes who perished in the line of duty at the Pentagon. To their family and friends, you do not grieve or suffer alone. Americans everywhere hold you lovingly in our arms and hearts. The terrorist attacks of September 11 underscore the need to refocus and transform our defense establishment and our defense strategy, to redirect our warfighting capabilities from those prepared to fight 20th century wars to those necessary to win 21st century conflicts. Terrorism had long been identified as a real threat, As many of you know, I served for 2 years on the Commission on Terrorism, which was one of many warning about terrorism. Now there is the urgency to transform our response capabilities. SMC has always been at the leading edge of that transformation. Indeed, the change from Materiel Command to Space Command underscores that the role you have performed and will continue to perform will not be diminished. Space-based assets, particularly those related to intelligence collection, will be increasingly important whether we are intercepting terrorist communications, tracking the movements of our adversaries' armored units, or preventing a ballistic missile from landing on our troops or on our homeland. Further analysis of the September 11 attacks has already highlighted some of the human intelligence gaps and will likely highlight the failure to correctly interpret or forward intelligence data that had been collected. As the ranking Democrat on the House Terrorism and Homeland Security Subcommittee, we are already working to address some of those failures. We are particularly focused on the coordination of efforts between our intelligence gathering agencies and the allocation of resources for collection and interpretation. In that regard, I applaud the President's creation of the cabinet-level Office of Homeland Security and the appointment of Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge. I also applaud something I've just learned of, which is the appointment of retired four-star General Wayne Downing to be the counterterrorism advisor to the President. He's an exceptionally able man, a man I served with on the Commission on Terrorism, and I think the President is making all the right decisions to build the right team to help us. But in the larger context, we must do more. Last week, I spoke to Defense Secretary Rumsfeld and told him that, in my view, if there ever was a time for defense reform, this is it. We cannot afford, nor will our nation be well served, if all we do is layer a 21st century strategy on top of a 20th century one. Our initial response to the September 11 attacks is to be generous not only to the victims, but also to those we are asking to defend us. But we have long known that defense dollars are not well spent and that strategy is not well coordinated. The tooth-to-tail ratio of fighting capability to bureaucracy and infrastructure is too much tail and not enough tooth. Layering a new defense atop another can only exacerbate this situation. Our joint warfighting capabilities with our allies is marked by inadequate equipment, insufficient training, and uncoordinated doctrine. We may find that as a result, the coalition fighting terrorism is hampered, not helped, in its ability to respond. As many of you know firsthand, there is also the issue of quality of life concerns, which hamper the retention of the talented women and men who serve in uniform. We are unlikely to see significant improvements if the increased defense expenditures go to pay for military operations and don't go to pay for you. So, we have to make hard choices, choices that Congress is not very good at. I've often said that too many in Congress are in the pet rock protection business, and sadly, too many in the Pentagon are too. The war against terrorism is real, and we will win it. And perhaps the spirit of that effort will also help us win the war against inefficiency, against bloated bureaucracies, and against outmoded business practices and outmoded weapons and platforms. Until we win it, we could be buying less defense when we clearly need more. We need more of the cutting-edge platforms and systems that are built and integrated here in the South Bay, and more of the 21st century strategies that are at the core of SMC's work, and more of the leadership that past commanders and the present commander provide, not just for our Space Command, but for our whole military effort in the United States. I have visited Ground Zero in New York and seen the devastation at the Pentagon. Preventing a second wave of attack is my first priority, and yours. This is, right here, ground zero for the prevention effort. Or is it zero gravity for the prevention effort? Thank you for including me in this ceremony.
Thank you, Congresswoman Harmon. I would like to now read a memo of congratulations. It reads, on 11 January 2001, the Commission to Assess U.S. National Security Space Management and Organization, the Space Commission, released its recommendations to promote the role of space capabilities in our nation's defense. One of the most important recommendations of the Commission was to realign Air Force headquarters and field commands to more effectively organize, train, and equip for prompt and sustained space operations. On 1 October 2001, the Air Force implements a critical step of that realignment as the Space and Missile Systems Center is transferred from Air Force Materiel Command to Air Force Space Command. Since its creation, the Space and Missile Systems Center has led the nation in developing critical military space capabilities that we rely upon every day. It is truly the birthplace of space for the Air Force. This critical mission will not change with the transfer to Air Force Space Command. We expect that this innovative and dedicated workforce will continue to exceed the nation's expectations. Today we recognize also the vital contributions Air Force Materiel Command has made and will continue to make to the success of the Space and Missile Systems Center. The transfer of the center is the first phase of a new era for Air Force Space. With changes in Washington, Colorado Springs, and Los Angeles, we will streamline the management, development, acquisition, and operation of space forces. These changes will enhance the development and fielding of increasingly important space forces and help grow our next generation of leaders. We salute the men and women of Air Force Materiel Command, Air Force Space Command, and the Space and Missile Systems Center on this important day. Signed, General John P. Jumper, Chief of Staff, and Dr. James G. Roche, Secretary of the Air Force. It is now my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our commander, Lieutenant General Arnold.
Thank you, Sergeant Carter. Great words by Congresswoman Harmon, and thank you all for coming today. It's great to see some old friends out there, former commanders, and of course my mom, General Lyles, General DeCook, General Jeffers, good friend Doc Fogelson. Little did I know that a lot of my effort last year was working directly with the chief on the Space Commission, and now I'm going to live it. But I'd like to also thank another personal friend, General Mike Hamill, for picking up what we left off when I left the Pentagon, and has done a terrific job in moving forward on all the planning for this. So, Mike, personally, my hat's off to you and your team. Well, the big realignment day is finally here, and we are officially part of Air Force Space Command. This is very exciting, and what a wonderful opportunity the Space Commission has provided us in bringing these two great organizations together, Air Force Space Command and SMC. And really, I can't think of two better people here to preside over this than former commanders of SMC, General Lyles and General DeCook. So thank you very much for coming, and great words of inspiration for the future. We've essentially come full circle. As Sergeant Carter mentioned, going back to 1954, when you start off with General Bernie Schreiber as commander of the Western Development Division, he basically had under his control all the things we're going back to: acquisition, development, production, sustainment, operations, all under one command. We've come full circle. Here we are, 1 October 2001, 47 years later, and we've come together again as a complete team. The idea to create a critical mass for space to provide an enhancement to national security for this nation. And today we become one team of space professionals with one goal in mind, as Congresswoman Harmon mentioned, and that is to provide or continue to provide the necessary tools for the warfighter to do their job out there. Space is perhaps more important than ever before. We're faced with a new enemy, a new kind of warfare, a war against terrorism. And believe me when I say that space will be at the forefront in providing us the capability to win this next war. And we in Space Command, Air Force Space Command that is, will be at the center of this effort because of what we provide in, from, and through space for our warfighters to do the right kinds of tools to combat and to defeat terrorism, which indeed we will do. Additionally, the warfighter is counting on us to reduce what we call the kill chain. Find, fix, track, target, engage, and assess the damage we did to that target, or what we call the F2T2E, and to reduce that time down to a matter of minutes. And I'm confident we can do that under this new team between Air Force Space Command and SMC. And believe me when I say that our new Chief of Staff, General Johnny Jumper, is extremely interested in what space can provide for the warfighter. General Lyles and I spent about an hour and a half with him on Friday, and he is very interested in seeing what we can bring to the table. So I'm very, very comfortable with our new chief and the strength and the support that he will give to the space programs. As we join the Air Force Space Command team, we need to remember that we are also part of the acquisition team. And so, as such, we need to stay closely connected to AFMC. As part of the Space and Missile Enterprise Management concept, we need to stay closely attached to the other product centers and their enterprise management. And so, General Lyles, while you thought you were getting rid of us, we're still going to be very close at hand. We also appreciate your guidance and your leadership that you've provided us, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and your great team at AFMC. To General DeCook, sir, your family is together, and SMC is very excited to be joining that family and looking forward to working with you in the future. Space is truly at the forefront of our national security, and by bringing these two cultures together, we can help shape this future. Just as great pioneers like Billy Mitchell once said, in developing air power, one has to look forward and not backwards, and figure out what's going to happen and not so much what has happened. Together, the AFSBC and the SMC team will lead the DoD in developing U.S. space power. And believe me, we are looking forward and not backwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Arnold. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. The pleasure of your company is requested at a reception in the garden room and the patio room. Please stand for the playing of the Air Force song and the departure of the official party.